It's time now for another press review here on France 24 with Erin Ogunki, who's with me here on my left in the studio. And Erin, you're starting with some major territorial gains for Ukraine in their war against Russia.
Yeah, a major shift of balance, Thomas. It made the cover page of the French paper Libération this morning. The breakthrough reads the headline, which notes that Ukraine launched counteroffensive both in the north and in the east, retaking the strategic towns of Izium and Kupiansk. Now, the Kiev Post wonders what all of this will mean for Russia. The paper citing Ukrainian claims that Russian units were wiped out during these counteroffensives, losing as many as 10,000 Kremlin forces, according to Kiev, some estimates from Kiev in the past couple of days alone. While the editorial piece does acknowledge that the situation definitely puts Ukraine in a better spot, it says that Kiev should remain cautious because Vladimir Putin, for now, is showing no signs of acknowledging any defeats, meaning that we should definitely assume that the war will not be over anytime soon.
And Erin, many papers are arguing that these losses do, though, undeniably weaken Vladimir Putin's image.
Yeah, Thomas, the New York Times says that the recent setbacks for the Kremlin are weakening Vladimir Putin's reputation as a savvy geopolitical strategist, as the head of an all-powerful military, essentially, that was undefeatable. Discontent about these failures is rising. The article citing just a few examples, including Chechen leader and, of course, Vladimir Putin ally Ramzan Kadyrov, who, in a rare rebuke of the Kremlin, accused the Russian military of making mistakes and also failing to explain those mistakes honestly to the public. The piece also quotes residents of Moscow, Thomas, for example, whose family members were killed after being conscripted into the Russian forces. So when people feel like their family members are being set up to failure, they're risking their lives essentially for defeat, it obviously creates frustration. The idea being that there are so many lies you can tell, only so many lies you can tell without the truth catching up to you eventually. Now, the Wall Street Journal, for its part, has a much bleaker assessment. The paper warning that Vladimir Putin is going to be looking at how to respond to growing perceptions that his military is a lot weaker than many had expected. Western leaders, the Wall Street Journal says, need to be prepared that he will use nuclear weapons or attempt to involve NATO directly into the conflict to prove that at the end of the day, the military is not so weak.
OK, we're changing gears now, and papers have also had quite a lot to say this Monday, Erin, about the elections in Sweden, which took place on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm going to cover some Swedish papers this morning, Thomas. It's obviously the cover of many of them. Svenska Dagbladet's headline says that initial joy turned into worried expressions in a nail-biting race, essentially, after the far-right Swedish Democrat Party, of course, with neo-Nazi roots, edged ahead now that over 94% of the votes have been counted. The paper argues that even though the final results aren't completely clear yet, what is clear is that Sweden needs to change course, at least according to this editorialist. The paper saying that 8 years under social democrat rule have not seen successes in terms of reversing the trend of crime. The editorialist arguing that it's also that the government hasn't taken sufficient measures to reduce exclusion, segregation, and the parallel societies that have emerged, obviously, with respect to immigration. It says that the reality is that citizens are not just accepting propaganda, they're not a bunch of extremists, but that they're reacting to societal changes that the left has refused to address, and according to this editorialist, that the right has done a better job at addressing. Swedish paper, the Göteborgs-Posten, argues that Sweden deserves better. This editorial is decrying the kind of populist, aggressive nature of the campaign, which he said was reduced to basic one-liners, gossipy sound bites, not only in debates, but also from the politicians themselves on social media websites like Twitter, all of which is causing voters to lose trust in Swedish politicians. He concludes then that he hopes this election will go down in history as the low point that forced Sweden to change course as far as political discourse and campaigning goes.
Now, meanwhile, here in France, Erin, the Communist Party has come under fire for denouncing what's supposed to be one of its central values.
Yeah, Thomas, there's a really connection, I think, between these two stories in the sense that the left in many countries is kind of grappling with the rise of far-right parties, what that says about their failure to kind of engage with voters. On that theme, the Communist Party leader and former presidential candidate for the Communist Party here in France, Fabien Roussel, was reacting to the rise of the far-right here, saying that there are certain talking points on the left that voters no longer find acceptable. It's not resonating. So he says that the left should, quote, focus more on defending work and less on handouts. The NUPIS left-wing coalition and the Socialist Party have both reacted and with similar messages saying that it's true that a portion of the French population has not been choosing left-wing parties in the past elections, but that a republic that values work is also not incompatible with social handouts, including simply unemployment protection. Also, that politicians should not be dividing French population between, the good guys who work and the bad guys who require social assistance.
And finally, for this press review, there's good news on the horizon for treating cancer. Erin, what have you found out?
This is really exciting, Thomas. It sounds like it could be a game changer, honestly, in detecting several types of cancers before symptoms even begin to show, which concerns all of us, really. It's a blood test called Galleri, and it was offered to over 6,000 adults in a study, and it detected dozens of new cases of different cancers. Most of them were at an early stage, and what's really interesting is that 75% of them were forms of cancer that are not routinely screened for. So doctors are excited about it, already telling health services that they should really be preparing for a new era of cancer screening thanks to this promising study. That said, the technology is still in development. It's not quite ready for population-wide screening on the whole, but it does offer a glimpse of what the future may hold in terms of being able to better treat early stages of cancer that typically aren't screened.
Okay, Erin Ogunki with the press review. Thank you very much.